Hello from Epic Snap Stories. Today I'm going to explain an action, sci-fi movie called Death Race. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. The movie opens in a dystopian future in which the US economy has collapsed, resulting in high unemployment and crime rates. As a result, the prison system has descended into crisis, and private corporations have taken over them to earn profit. One such facility is Terminal Island Penitentiary, run by the ruthless warden Claire Hennessy. She makes money by broadcasting the death race, in which prisoners compete as racers. They fight for survival in heavily modified and weaponized vehicles on a track built into the prison grounds. The reward for the prisoners is that if they win 5 consecutive races, they will be granted their freedom. In the next scene, we witness a thrilling death race between the final 2 contestants, Frankenstein and Machine Gun Joe. They're fiercely competing and attacking each other's vehicles. But shortly after, Frankenstein's navigator, Case, informs him that all of his defensive weapons have failed. She advises him to stop, as he can easily get killed. However, Frankenstein refuses to let Joe win and continues to accelerate. He then orders Case to exit the car, to which she reluctantly complies with. Unfortunately, moments later, Joe detonates a bomb and destroys Frankenstein's vehicle just when he crosses the finish line. Elsewhere, we meet our protagonist, Jensen Ames, an ex-convict who now works at a steel mill. He struggles to provide for his family and is barely making ends meet. To make matters worse, one day, the police arrive at the steel mill and shut it down for operating illegally. This places Jensen in an even more desperate situation. Afterward, he returns home, disheartened, and shares the bad news with his wife. However, she remains supportive and assures him that they will find a way to make things work. The couple then begins making out, but suddenly their daughter starts crying upstairs. This prompts Jensen to head upstairs while his wife continues cooking in the kitchen. After some time, he returns downstairs and is horrified to find his wife lying dead on the floor. As soon as he turns around, a masked attacker sprays something in his face. The attacker then places a bloody knife in Jensen's hand and leaves after making a shooting gesture with his hands. Jensen doesn't understand what's going on and quickly passes out. When he finally awakens, he's shocked to see several cops surrounding him. They suspect him of his wife's murder and immediately arrest him without hearing any explanation. The scene then cuts to 6 months later, where Jensen is transferred to Terminal Island Penitentiary. There, a sadistic guard named Ulrich welcomes him with freezing water and orders another guard to beat him up. After that, Jensen is led to his cell, where he's threatened once again by his cellmate. However, our protagonist quickly retaliates by knocking out 3 men and asserting his authority in the cell. The next day, while he's quietly having lunch, another inmate named Pachenko arrives and tries to provoke him for no reason. He calls Jensen a wife murderer and asks if he has killed any kids as well. This enrages our hero, prompting the two to engage in a fight. But before they can cause any serious harm, some guards arrive and separate them. Ulrich then grabs Jensen and takes him to Warden Hennessy to be punished for causing trouble. However, upon their meeting, Jensen realizes that he has been brought here for some ulterior motive. Hennessy reads his file and mentions how he used to race cars and was a terrific driver. She then informs him that Frankenstein passed away in his last race, but the public doesn't know this yet. It turns out that his absence has caused a significant drop in ratings, as he was very popular and loved by everyone. As a result, Hennessy requests that Jensen replace him while wearing a mask. She reveals that no one has ever seen Frankenstein's face, and his true identity remains unknown. She also claims that Frankenstein has already won 4 death races, and Jensen only needs to win the next one to be free. Upon hearing this, Jensen is initially reluctant, but when Hennessy threatens to isolate him in solitary confinement, he has no choice but to agree. After that, she introduces Jensen to 3 inmates named Coach, Gunner, and Lists, who are the mechanics for Frankenstein's vehicle. It turns out they are among the few people who know about Frankenstein's death. After exchanging introductions, Coach describes the race structure, which spans 3 days and is divided into 3 phases. The first 2 phases are eliminatory, which means that the goal is to finish alive. In the final phase, speed is vital because the first person to cross the finish line wins. Each participant will be accompanied by a navigator who will be a female inmate. Next, Lists begins discussing some of Jensen's opponents, including his biggest rival, Machine Gun Joe. Then, there is Pachenko, whom Jensen has already met, the Chinese-American driver 14K, Grimm, who idolizes Hennessy, and Colt, a former professional racer. At this moment, Jensen notices a van arriving with a group of inmates who are allowed to work outside. They're wearing tracking devices around their wrists to prevent any escape attempts. Seeing this, Jensen becomes shocked since the masked man who killed his wife also had a similar tracking device. The next day, it is the first phase of the death race, and Jensen is given Frankenstein's attire, mask, and even his ring. Shortly after, the female inmates who will serve as navigators arrive, and Case joins Jensen in the car. He introduces himself, but she tells him to drop the act because she knows everything. At this moment, Coach arrives and tells Jensen that he can remove his mask since the windows are made of mirrored glass. Jensen complies, and upon seeing his face, Case remarks that he's more handsome than the last Frankenstein. Shortly after, the online broadcast of the deadly race kicks off with 12 million viewers tuning in. Before the race begins, Jensen establishes communication with Coach, who advises him not to take the lead right away to avoid getting killed. The race then begins, with all the inmates doing their best to survive. Case guides Jensen through the shortcuts he must take on the track. Viewers are excited to see Frankenstein back in action, and the broadcast quickly reaches 45 million views. At one point, Grim kills a minor driver by pushing his car into it, but he's soon run over by Joe and killed. Jensen then tries to activate his weapons, but his car's machine gun jams. This prompts Case to risk her life by climbing into the gunner's seat to repair it. Another navigator continuously fires at her, but Jensen manages to save her thanks to his quick maneuvering. Following this, several drivers band together against Jensen, believing him to be the powerful Frankenstein. His car sustains significant damage, and the thin armor begins to give away under the constant attacks. A worried Coach advises him to quit, but Jensen devises a daring plan. He asks Case to unload a petrol tanker into the air, which soon splatters all over Colt's vehicle. Taking advantage of this, Case throws a cigarette lighter at the fuel-soaked car. This causes it to explode and kill Colt on the spot. In the aftermath, the race is about to end, and it appears that Jensen is on the verge of victory. However, Pachenko calls out to him from his window and uses the same hand gesture as the masked assailant that night. This finally makes Jensen realize that the man is his wife's murderer. He freezes in shock, allowing the other drivers to pass him. In the end, Jensen finishes in last place, while Pachenko comes first. Later, a furious Jensen approaches Hennessy and informs her that he won't participate in the race anymore. But the cunning woman pulls out a picture of his daughter with her new foster parents. She tries to emotionally blackmail him by claiming that his daughter will never see him again and will grow up to call someone else Dad. Upon hearing this, Jensen's heart sinks and he reluctantly agrees to race as it is the only way to reunite with his daughter. Later that night, Jensen approaches Pachenko to confront him about his wife's death. But Pachenko and his men quickly apprehend him and begin beating him up. While the others restrain him, Pachenko grabs a large wrench and prepares to slam his head. But out of nowhere, someone attacks him from behind. It turns out to be Liszt, who has stabbed Pachenko with a pen. Jensen seizes this opportunity to grab a massive steel block and begins fighting back against his enemies. He then viciously attacks Pachenko and demands to know why he murdered his wife. Fearing for his life, Pachenko confesses that Hennessy ordered him to murder his wife. He reveals that Ulrich took him there to commit the deed. Now that Jensen knows the truth, he proceeds to kill the man for revenge. But several guards arrive in the nick of time and subdue them both with stun guns. The next day, it's time for Phase 2 of the race, and there are only 6 competitors left. However, as the race begins, Jensen drives at a very slow speed, as if he intends to lose. He then questions Case about the truth behind Frankenstein's death and threatens to eject her if she doesn't answer him. In the end, Case admits that she sabotaged Frankenstein's car, resulting in his death. She admits that Hennessy ordered her to do so and promised to release her in exchange. Case also reveals that she was never meant to kill Frankenstein or Jensen, but rather to keep them both from winning and thus unable to leave the prison. Upon hearing this, Jensen is horrified and realizes that escape from this hellhole is impossible. Fueled by rage, he accelerates and sets his sights on Pachenko to take revenge on him. The two get into a violent fight and attack each other's vehicles. Jensen then recklessly lunges at Pachenko and activates a smoke grenade. This impairs the murderer's vision, causing him to crash into a concrete barrier. He manages to survive, but Jensen reverses his vehicle and snaps his neck, finally eliminating him. Upon witnessing this, Hennessy becomes increasingly anxious. She sends out a heavily fortified 18-wheeler truck known as the Dreadnought to eliminate racers and boost viewership. This menacing vehicle eliminates numerous racers, and in the end, only Jensen and Joe are left. Realizing that they cannot face this alone, the two decide to team up together and take down the truck. They attack the dreadnought from opposite sides while evading its relentless attack. When a trap manhole appears in their path, they each hit it with two wheels, triggering the mechanism. This causes the trap to rise and the truck to collide with it, finally resulting in its destruction. The match also concludes, and only Jensen and Joe advance to the third and last phase of the race. After a while, Joe approaches Jensen and expresses his suspicions that he's Frank. He points out that their voices seem very similar and threatens to unmask him. Meanwhile, Hennessy and Ulrich are conspiring to get rid of Jensen since he is becoming a liability. Ulrich expresses concern about the broadcast, but Hennessy claims Frankenstein is simply a mask that anyone can wear. The two then decide to plant a bomb under Jensen's car and kill him tomorrow. The next day, it is the final day of the race, and Jensen is plotting with his mechanic crew. He asks them to keep half a gallon of fuel as a reserve, although he doesn't reveal why. After that, he approaches Joe and suggests that they have a conversation because they are the only ones left in the race. Afterward, Hennessy gives a pep talk to the prisoners while Ulrich plants a bomb in Jensen's car. The match soon starts, and both the racers give each other tough competition. When Jensen tries to use his weapons, he discovers that they have been deactivated by the organizers. Meanwhile, Joe, who has full access to resources, continues to attack his rival, which makes the warden really happy. Shortly after, Joe fires a series of missiles, but surprisingly at a large hole in the prison wall, which was weakened in the previous race. After this, the two cars drive out of the prison, which leaves everyone in shock. Hennessy is furious to see this and realizes the two rivals have conspired against her. As a desperate resort, she tries to detonate the bomb but is unsuccessful because Coach and his team had already discovered and removed it. She then angrily stops the broadcast transmission, which is being watched by 75 million people. Next, Hennessy sends helicopters and police cars to apprehend the two prisoners. When the police cars approach, Jensen releases the extra half-gallon reserve tank, which strikes all the vehicles. Soon enough, the two manage to cross the bridge that connects the prison island to the mainland. When they see helicopters approaching, Case offers herself as bait because she has already received her release papers. Shortly after, Jensen's vehicle crashes and is soon approached by the helicopters. A masked person then exits the car in a Frankenstein costume with his hands up. Everyone thinks it's Frankenstein, but it's actually Case in disguise. Meanwhile, Jensen and Joe have already gotten on a train and escaped the place. Joe says that he's going to Miami and invites Jensen to join him, but the latter reveals that he has to find his daughter first. Back in the prison, Ulrich informs Hennessy that, despite the chaos, they were able to capture Frankenstein. The idiots are still unaware that they caught the wrong person. Hennessy is overjoyed that the race attracted such a large number of viewers and she earned millions of dollars. Moments later, she notices a gift on her table, congratulating her on her record-breaking ratings. But when she opens it, she is horrified to discover that it is the same bomb they planted in Jensen's car. At this moment, Coach detonates the bomb in his workshop, which immediately causes an explosion, killing both Hennessy and Ulrich on the spot. The scene then cuts to 6 months later in Mexico, where we see Joe and Jensen working as mechanics and trying to live an honest life. One day, while they're working, Case unexpectedly shows up, and she and Joe excitedly hug each other. She then mentions that she had a minor issue with her release papers that caused the delay. Jensen is happy to see her and introduces her to his daughter, bringing the movie to an end.
Yeah, the wolves howling at the moon, neon lights flickering out too soon. Shadows crawl across the empty streets, echoes where the night heart beats. Rusted bones grind the silent air, lonely whispers turn a desperate prayer. Eyes of fire in the midnight dark, city screams with a vengeful spark. Silent air, lonely whispers turn to desperate prayer. Eyes of fire in the midnight dark, city screams with a vengeful spark. Roar like thunder through the storm, tear it down to its born. Rise from the ashes of defeat, feel the pulse, feel the heat. down. Screaming out till the silence breaks, turn the night to the dawn awakes. Blood and sweat on the battlefield, strength revealed, wounds healed. Wounds healed. Wounds healed. Roll like thunder through the storm, tear it down till it's born. Rise from the ashes of defeat, feel the pulse, feel the heat, roll the heat. Roll like thunder through the storm, tear it down till it's born. Rise from the ashes of defeat, feel the pulse, feel the heat. Broken chains on the pending cracks, haunted faces on the heavy sacks, chasing ghosts in the dead of night. In the block, I'm waiting for the leads. Broken dreams on the pavement cracks, haunted faces on the heavy sacks, haunted faces on the heavy sacks. On the pulse, feel the heat.